everyone to the Poverty and Homelessness Board all-member meeting for Thursday, August 12th. We have our agenda in front of us, so we're going to have a public comment for the first 5 minutes. So please put your name in the chat if you'd like to make public comment. And then we have our consent agenda. And Amanda's going to go over the group agreements that we began discussing at our last all-member meeting. And then U of O is going to be doing a presentation in round 2 update, which is going to be Kate instead of James. And then more conversation on the strategic planning project. And then the committee, the continuum of care bills and the NOFA, and then we'll get committee updates. All right. And so, yes, we do have new members today, so hopefully everybody feels comfortable. I would love if you could go around and introduce yourselves so that people know, and we'll start at the table, and then Carly, when we get to the last person, you can get to the folks on Zoom. So my name is Shawn Murphy, and I'm the Executive Director of Laurel Hill Center with Mental Health and the board chair for this year. Go ahead.
Am I on? Cool beans. Okay. I'm not used to mics. I'm used to just projecting. I'm Heather Quesanza. I'm the Director of Philanthropy for Community Supported Shelters. I am new to this board. I've been in Lane County since 2006. Oh my gosh, I'm coming up on 20 years rather quickly. I live in Springfield. I'm on the Springfield Public Schools Budget Committee and Equity Committee, and probably running for a position on the Springfield Public Schools Board. They just have an opening, and apparently I need more to do. So, yeah, and I have lived experience with housing insecurity and domestic violence and poverty, and really excited about the work that this board does, and super excited to be a part of it now. So, thank you for having me.
Good afternoon, Sheila Wegner. She, her are my pronouns, and I'm the district manager for Oregon Department of Human Services, Lane County, and I am here, I believe, as a stakeholder representative.
Hi, I have a loud voice. So Maggie Bagan, I'm from Florence, Oregon, part of the Florence Housing Resource Team, outreach coordinator for the food equity programs at the Farmers Market in Florence, and part of this board. And I have lived experience with housing insecurity as well.
Cliff Harold, Lane County Sheriff, and I serve as the at-large elected official for the board.
Amanda Borda. I work for Lane County Human Services Division, and I primarily oversee our continuing care activities, which I'll talk about today.
I am a certified recovery mentor at Story Connections Peer Center here in Eugene, and I'm also a combat veteran, and I have lived experience with family homelessness and poverty and domestic violence.
Appreciate your service. My name is Glenn Porter. I'm the project director with Equitable Social Solutions, and I oversee a couple of congregate and non-congregate shelters in Eugene and reside over in Eugene area.
I'm Matthias Smith, and I'm the lived experience youth representative.
Hi, I'm Enuma Ezabogo. I'm representing the U of O with my presentation, but I'm glad to be here because I'm interested in this cause.
Hi, I'm Kate Budd. I'm the Human Services Division Manager. I'm filling in for James Ewell, who is homesick with COVID today. For those of you who are in the room, just a reminder, you might need to pull the microphone close to you, because while we can hear each other, fortunately those on the screen may not be able to. Go
ahead, Carly, if you want to start with on the screen. Yeah, please. Yeah. So, Commissioner Farr?
My hearing of I can't hear your audio very well. This is Pat Farr, one of the vice chair for poverty of the Poverty and Homelessness Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you.
And I'm Mike Clark. I'm one of the vice chairs as well for homelessness. Although this is my last meeting, Unfortunately, I faced a recall election, which I did not prevail. So I will still be at these meetings as a provider, but I will no longer be a board member after this meeting.
And Debbie Farr?
Hi, everybody. Debbie Farr, she, her pronouns. I'm the Community Outreach and Engagement Manager for Trillium Community Health Plan CCO. I'm also a member of the Bethel School Board.
Thank you. And Rosie? I'll do,
she's unmuted,
yeah.
but-
I'll do a round to see if, I'll go back to Rosie to see if we can get her unmuted. And we'll go to Catherine.
Hi there, Catherine Ryan. I'm with the Pacific Source CCO, and I'm a, oh my gosh, I can't, stakeholder. I think in a stakeholder, a non-voting stakeholder seat.
And then Jack Boyson.
Hello, my name is Jack Boyson. I'm the Director of Operations over at St. Vinny's. I'm a non-voting member and brand new. Very excited to be here.
Welcome. Are we back to Rosie? Yeah. Okay. Rosie, can you unmute? We can't hear you. Can you unmute? I can't tell if that's her. Yeah, there we go. Do you want to introduce yourself, Rosie?
And I see it looks like she's even talking and she's
Yeah.
unmuted, but we're just not hearing your words.
We still can't hear you.
Go to Mayor Van Gordon.
Okay. We'll work on it again, and then we'll go to Mayor Van Gordon. I'll come back to you, Rosie.
Sean Van Gordon, Mayor of Springfield.
Mayor Venice isn't here, correct? Yeah. Okay. Is Donna here?
I don't see her.
Okay. We do Kate. We see Chris?
Not yet.
Dr. Foster? No. Oh, okay. All right. All right, Rosie, hopefully third time is a charm. You want to try again, see if we can hear you?
She looks frozen now.
No, she looks.
You would think after the pandemic, we would all be really good at this, but none of us are, and it's depressing.
Yes.
Okay.
I tried to unmute it. I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go. Yay. All right, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Rosie Marquez, and I'm case manager for supportive services for veterans family at St. Vincent de Paul. And I'm a voting part of the board, voting member.
And if you are on and I didn't call your name, would you speak up? Everybody, your names kind of move around as I'm trying to go through the list.
And they're a member.
If you're a member. I think we got everyone. All right, so welcome. Carly, do we have anything in the chat for public comment? Not yet. Okay. All right, okay. So we are on approving the minutes and the consent agenda and the revised 2024 all-in financial summary. Do you all need a minute to take a look before I ask for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the previous meeting and the consent agenda, as well as the revised all-in financial summary.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda.
Thank you, Sean. Can everyone hear me, hopefully? Okay. So I'll just go over the group agreements, which are in your packet. This is a document that really came out of our Lived Experience Advisory Group, League, and has been reviewed by the Executive Committee as well. And so this is a final document that I think we're hoping to get approval on today and that the group can agree upon. So just to give you a little bit of background, this really went to League initially as the idea of wanting a kind of code of conduct or something similar for the Poverty and Homelessness Board. And what the group really talked about was really more focused on what would make this body and all of our spaces really safe for people with lived experience, and what would make those spaces welcome for folks, especially with lived experience, to participate in those groups, because that is a goal of our work. And so what they came up with is here, and I kind of put those into some main kind of topic areas that came up during that discussion. And so the first is really honor the purpose of the PHB, which is included here at the top of the document, and make sure we're really focused on that scope of work. Treating everyone with mutual respect and really cultivating that environment of mutual respect, especially when there are sort of differences in opinions on how to address the issues or the strategies that we want to pursue. We know we might not all agree on everything, but being open to understanding where other folks are coming from. Participating fully and transparently in your role on the PHB. So everyone sort of represents a variety of sectors at this table, and just being really transparent in your work and your participation in the board, and really actively participating from that perspective. Assuming good intentions, so assuming that all of us are here because we deeply care about this topic of work and that we really want to address the issues. So assuming everyone is coming with that good intention. Removing judgment, and this was really important just from the perspective of folks with lived experience, really recognizing that folks who live in poverty or who have experienced homelessness are routinely judged in their decisions and their lives, and so making sure we're at any point trying to remove that judgment when we're making decisions. And to that effect, also honoring lived experience in general, and also the potential, recognizing potential trauma that folks might bring to the table and to the room, and really lifting up and providing opportunities for those voices to be lifted up who have lived experience, and to especially come from marginalized communities who may not have always had a seat at the table, or who might not always be heard. Be aware of and work to reduce power dynamics. So we recognize that folks obviously represent a variety of sectors and different perceived power at this table, and making sure that we're making efforts to build up those who might have less perceived power in the room. And then just in general, being informed and seeking to learn always as a member of the body. And so we will commit to providing orientation and making sure all members have sort of the same knowledge coming into the group, and especially those with lived experience who might need additional support in making sure that they feel like they have a good understanding of what the group is talking about, being aware of using acronyms, things like that, so that we're all just coming with the same understanding. And so I think that really covers it. And I think, and Kate can always add to sort of the intention, but I think we're looking to have members sort of sign this document, and we can certainly, as a group, you all can continue to edit this, add to it, change it. So as the group kind of develops, and if you think of things that are not represented here in group agreements, you could always edit the document as you need to. And so I think it's meant to be an ongoing living thing.
Thank you, Amanda. So I'm going to ask for a motion, and then once we get a motion, then we'll have a discussion in between. Does that work for everybody? And a motion to adopt?
As presented.
As presented, and then we'll have a discussion. If we want to make changes or amendments, we'll make it in that process. So is anybody willing to motion to accept the document?
Accept the document.
Thank you, Glenn. All right, so.
I'll second it.
Seconded, okay.
I'll make the motion.
Oh, we got it, Pat.
Oh, you did? Okay, sorry, my audio's a little bit shaky.
Yeah, Glenn made the motion and Maggie seconded it. So now I'd like to open it up for discussion. Go ahead, Heather.
So one thing that I'm noticing in this agreement, there's not a whole lot about accessibility in terms of providing other means of accessibility to folks. So whether it's large print, whether it's other languages, whether it's working with an advocate that someone may have to help them understand the documentation that's being provided. I think that would be maybe something that could be added to this to really ensure that anyone who's interested in participating in this board feels welcome, even if they're not, if English isn't their first language, or if they have a disability that inhibits their ability to understand documents in these formats. So whether it's having more options online or, again, that language barrier piece. But that would be something that I think would be great to add to this.
There is a note at the end about accommodations, but we could expand upon that and be more specific. The idea of having that support and having potentially an advocate with folks, especially with lived experience, did come up in that discussion. So we can always more specify that to include some of the things you talked about.
Other?
Can I just ask a question? Is this available in alternate languages? So if somebody were to look online, would they be able to see that?
It will be,
Okay.
once we have an adopted document.
Thank you.
Other board members? Carly, you can see the folks online, right, if they want to make a comment? Okay. Any other discussion? I want to thank the lived experience group who made this document, and also thanks for pointing out the lingo about accommodations, because we take it for granted that people understand what accommodations are. But if you don't work with that every day, you wouldn't know what that meant. So thank you, Heather. Okay, so we have a first and a second. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that?
And I think I need to restate it. I think I caught myself as soon as I said that. That basically we are voting on that we are approving this document along with the edits for expanding on what accommodations actually means. Okay, yes, all right. Okay, now all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you. And, okay, our presentation is next.
You can stay there. I'll tee you up too. All right, so we are very fortunate today to have Enuma here from the University of Oregon 3 p.m. Master's Program. And Enuma is an intern with Lane County who is taking up work that was done by previous 3 p.m. Master's students around the high interest among nonprofits that Lane County was hearing about to receive kind of collaborative support for infrastructure needs. So maybe there's a need for HR or fiscal support or other things that are costly, take a great deal of knowledge and skill, but may not be possible for an independent nonprofit to be able to hire someone to be able to do. And so Enuma, thank you so much for being here today.
Okay. Is it okay? It's on. Good afternoon. My name is Enuma. A nonprofit master's student at the U of O, and I took up this project last month to follow up on what my former cohorts who are now graduates, the research they did, and I'm gonna try as much as possible not to waste so much time on the slide, so I could just take us to where we are now and what the next steps are. So, like Kate rightly said, nonprofits complained about their low capacity to deal with administrative issues which kind of takes away most of their time and doesn't allow them to commit to the mission and to drive home the mission. So what the 3 p.m. students before me did was we went in to have engagement with these nonprofits. We had a total of 42 nonprofits, even though we ended up having interviews with just 34. And we divided them into sections of employees lower than 20 and employees higher than 20. And we called that small and larger nonprofits, respectively. The first one, where we have the fourth, the fifth one. Thank you. So that was the first, yes. So that was the first model. We kind of thought it would be nice to look at all these models and compare what their output is, their cost, and which one would be more practical to obtain and, well, least expensive, even though the one we're going with kind of has a high cost. So the digital transformation is, we know what that is, transforming to like software, which would get the job done, but was really expensive. When we did the research, went next to the cross-sector alliance model, where we have a couple of nonprofits come together to outsource their services to like an outside company, but they had an issue with this because most times these companies do this thing with the nonprofits have to have like an aligned mission. So we saw some kind of hitches there. We also thought about I'm just going to jump to the centralized services, which we recommended because of time. So we came here and we found something interesting here because we have LCOG. This is where LCOG comes into place. Yeah, we could go to the next slide. Yeah, this is where LCOG comes into place, the Lane Council of Governments, and they offer these services to nonprofits. It's currently going on. That's what they do. We also spoke to the Nonprofit Association of Oregon, who currently don't offer these services. However, they're launching something like this early in 2025. So where we are, we're going to be speaking to these nonprofits again to know the possibility of getting this service when NAO begins in 2025. So for now, we are concentrating on LCOG. So, this is our timelines we had and So this is all we've done, and this is when in June, the services were concluded, and I took up this project last month. So yeah, we had 34 interviews, like I said, 19 smaller nonprofits. I already described how we defined smaller and larger nonprofits, and 15 larger nonprofits. So most of the larger nonprofits kind of are tackling this issue now because they have like a larger budget, they have higher capacity, and even the ones who indicated interest wanted like the digital transformation. So our concentration going forward is more of the smaller nonprofits because they expressed an interest in this and are eager to engage in this process. Okay, so we also found that the major issues, I'm on the 16th slide, thank you. So we also found that the major issues these nonprofits struggle with are HR, financial management, and reporting. Now, under financial management, people have to get their books in order, which is really important when people want to like give grants or give support to nonprofits. These are the kind of things they look at. So getting their books in order, it's time-consuming, needs people, so that is somewhere they complained about. And also HR managing their numbers and payroll and every other administrative issue, and also reporting, managing grants while they get them and reporting back to the funders. Okay, 18th slide, thank you. So beyond these services which they are interested in, they also were appealing to, interested funders and other stakeholders, I would say, to advocate for a better grant application process where it's less time consuming and also increasing overhead ratios to allow for more funds for administrative issues. I mean, if these issues were addressed, we wouldn't be having this problem now. So these were some concerns they raised. Okay, and yes, so when it comes to, I already talked about LCOG. So where we are now, I'm just going to jump to where we are right now. So I've had a couple of meetings with the ED of LCOG and Brenda. She's very eager to help and start this process. However, it's not going to be so easy because we've spoken to these nonprofits for the process, for the reason of research, and we got all this information. So now I'm going to have to go back to them one-on-one to speak to them. We've created like a new follow-up survey, and we've listed out these issues they've mentioned. Because when I had the meeting with Brenda last week, which I made sure I did before this presentation, so I'll have more information, she said she couldn't give us like a cost for running these programs because she needs to know what exactly is needed for which nonprofit. And of course, the more nonprofits we bring to her to deal with, the lower the cost. Now, another issue these smaller nonprofits expressed, they struggle with like releasing some kind of autonomy and releasing control of their books. These are some, I would say, reservations they had. They also talked about like funding, if they're worried about being able to afford these services. So these are two concerns they've raised. For the first one, I believe before we start this project, we would have contracts which will, to a large extent, address these issues of who handles the books and, what amount of power are they really willing to release, and I think that the contract would cover that when we get to the implementation stage. And for the second one, funding, that's something I'm going to also discuss with them and maybe get some answers here as well to know what capacity they have to cover this cost. So it's kind of a back and forth because now I'm talking about funding. When I go back to the nonprofits, they would like to know how much is this going to cost, because that's the only way they can give me the answer of what they can afford. So I'm in the process of meeting with each of them now, and they're about 19, and they may be more, to know what exactly they need and in what capacity. Okay, you need HR services. What's your number? What exact HR services do you need? Because some small organizations don't need, there may be some services which they can do without. So which ones do you need? And we put this into we build this into a menu, which we will then take back to LCOG. So because of this large number, the way I'm thinking we would play it is, maybe when I get about 5, I would let Brenda know this is the number we're working with. But if I was to wait till we get information from all 19, this may get into next year, because scheduling these meetings are not very straightforward, combined with my classes and all that. So I think we'll just break them into blocks. Maybe we get 5, we transfer to her, and we get a cost, and we connect the two parties. And I'm sorry, how long have I taken? I'm so sorry.
You're okay. You're doing great.
Okay, okay. I was worried. So that's where we are now, having this conversation and having to go back to them. And also, new information I got was when I spoke to LCOG, they're actually ready to do this at a discounted price. And even though she didn't give me a figure, yes, because I'm not giving her what exactly I need, she was ready to, she has some funds to channel into this project, which I thought was really good news, because she's really invested in making this work. So I think it's important that while everyone is kind of interested about it, it's kind of happening now. We don't like rest. We continue with these conversations. So I thought to do this presentation just to get more information, just in case there's something I need to tell the nonprofits that I would hear from here, because once I'm done here, I need to start having those meetings and engaging them and building up that menu for LCOG. I think, yes, and with the Nonprofit Association of Oregon, the nonprofits that are taking part in this pilot program next year are going to be only nonprofits who are registered with them. So I also plan to discuss that with these nonprofits to know if they're registered, what do you need to register? I already went through the website. I think it's pretty affordable, I would say. You have about $60 annually for nonprofits with an annual budget of maybe 50,000. So the highest is about 700. Yeah, so I think it's affordable to a large extent, I would say. I'm using the word affordable very carefully. Okay, so yeah, I already spoke about this. So that's where we are now, going back to these nonprofits to speak with them and build up this menu. So now we're speaking with them with more intention. We're telling them, okay, we're ready to take this forward. What HR services do you need? We're not asking them what service. We have a list of administrative issues, and we're gonna raise them one by one and ask them how many. So we need these figures because that is how we'd get like a cost from LCOG. So that's where we are at now. Thank you. Glad to take questions.
And let me also, I think one key thing is, gosh, 42 agencies is fantastic that you've engaged. And there might be some of you who are sitting here or listening who might think, gosh, I don't think my agency is engaged, but we're interested. And so feel free, I can send out, would you be comfortable with me sending out your email?
Sure.
Awesome. I'll send out Anuma's email so you can get in touch with them if you're interested as well.
Mayor Van Gordon?
First, I would just want to say thanks for the work. This is something we've talked about for a long time. And, you know, it is difficult and nuanced work, and it's a good starting point to the conversation. I think I've got a couple there. I guess one question and just one general piece of feedback, because this kind of modeling this is really hard. How did you take into account the regulatory requirements when you considered sort of what people have to go through, right? So some of the financial requirements that nonprofits have to go to are sort of driven by the grant requirements. Or did you get to that level of detail, or are you just sort of assuming that if we have to do it, we're continuing to do it?
Please ask your question again. I need to hear you.
So when you think about all the services that you considered from a centralized perspective, some of them are compliance related, required under federal grants or state law. Is the assumption that, did you get into looking at what those requirements were, or did you just, or was it more like, hey, we just assumed that whatever the new model would be is automatically going to have to meet all those requirements?
I think I would say we discussed with them, I mean, I didn't have these interviews, but I know they mentioned having that issue of, you know, putting their books together. I hope I'm answering, putting their books together. And when I spoke with LCOG, this is something they have the capacity to cover. So I think I would say yes, we cover that, but some things may come, some issues may arise. So I would say it's like a back and forth, really, because I didn't like take part in the interview. So, but part of the issue, the services LCOG is reporting, because they have like accountants and auditors, they have everything, accountants, auditors, lawyers, HR personnel. So I think this is something they would have the capacity to address.
Yeah. And I think the piece of feedback I have looking at this from a capacity and financial model, and I think this is really hard, and it is a good start to that work. The thing that I don't know if concern's the right term, is that when you've got nonprofits of all different sizes, is just really understanding the price point, because LCOG not only would have to be competitive from a, hey, we can do the service, but it's got to be competitive to nonprofits to provide the service. An example I would say is really nonprofits, like small nonprofits, the executive director is the HR department, finance department, and chief cook and bottle washer, right? So, to move that work and pay somebody else to do it, there may not actually be sort of revenue attached to being able to do that. And I think on LCOG's side, right, sustainability from a financial perspective becomes really important, because each person has, it's not HR out of a box, but instead each organization may have its own individual HR or financial requirements. So you could have this situation where LCOG is sort of ingesting not a scalable service, but instead kind of like a unique boutique service that may make this kind of program unsustainable in the long term. And I know we're going through a couple of different iterations to it, but I'd be really interested to see that next level of information as this develops further, because it's got to be both competitive for nonprofits to go buy the service and then sustainable for LCOG to provide the service.
So when it comes to cost, I would say, from my conversations with LCOG, she made me understand these services are really subsidized. I don't know if that's the word, but much cheaper than what we would get, like, if we were to hire a lawyer independently. And the good thing is they're kind of flexible, and they're ready to maybe not merge, but give us like a packet that is tailored towards the needs. They're flexible to say, okay, 5 nonprofits need this, so it's going to be this cost. So they have the options of having subscriptions or paying by the hour. So, I think these nonprofits are the same ones complaining about not having the time to attend to these administrative services. So I'm thinking they should have, they should have some kind of budget, or be able to get some kind of funding channel towards this, or I don't know how the administrative dollars work, but I think they should have something, or get something channeled towards this. So that's where my mind is going, because it's something they need. So this is a service ready to be done. So
you were thinking about it 100% the right way, and I know and I'm gonna, let somebody else go for the interest of time, but you were thinking about it 100% the right way. That what you just described is what's going to make or break this as a project, right? That's where all the knots get tangled.
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you.
Heather?
Okay. Is it on? I have no idea. There we go. Okay. This, like, the light does not work on this thing. Okay. I've been a nonprofit professional for over 10 years now. I'm a certified fundraising executive. I'm one of only like 73 in the state of Oregon. So this project is very near and dear to my heart. I'm very excited about this. A couple of things that, as we're moving forward, I would love to see a list of nonprofits that were interviewed, and then see what the process is to potentially add additional nonprofits to that process. I would love to know where the funding is coming from for upfront costs, because the majority of nonprofits in the area have already built out their budgets for this fiscal year, and if this was not included in it, and it's something that we're planning on doing towards the beginning of 2025, this is not going to be viable for most nonprofits. So thinking about if there's ways to subsidize the funding for the upfront cost of this would be lovely. I think Mayor Van Gordon was spot on in terms of this. I think this is going to be more of like you have a base level of services that are offered, and then you have a la carte services, because the needs of every organization are going to be different. And I'm thinking about the compliance aspect of it. I know for our organization, like one thing that I just became aware of is that we're supposed to be registering in the state of California if we receive funding from the state of California. And I don't know that we've ever done that. And I don't know, like, there's so many nuances to nonprofit law and to the things that are required, and the grants and contracts that we're getting is what is requiring us to make those changes and do the things that we haven't done before, like having an audit and having specialized financial controls and things of that nature. Those are coming because of the new requirements for grants and other funding opportunities. And we're not typically paid for those things. That's not something that we're able to include in the budgets for those grant processes, and a 10% overhead is definitely not covering it the majority of the time. So thinking about alternative ways of funding things, and then I think organizations like the Oregon Community Foundation, MJ Murdoch Charitable Trust, some of the other larger foundations in the area might be interested in helping to fund this sort of project moving forward. If we're doing some sort of admin hub for a large amount of nonprofits, it would be good to reach out to them as well to see if this is something that they are either interested in funding or interested in supporting in some other way, maybe some administrative capacity or things like that.
Okay. And we're at time, but I want to make sure, does anybody else have a discussion or question before we move forward? Saying not, thank you so much for the presentation. You're welcome. And we'll be excited to hear from you again as you guys move forward with this project.
Okay, if it's okay, I'm just gonna sit.
Oh, yeah, you're good. Okay, all right. Okay, and we are going to move on with Kate and the all-in round 2 update.
Thank you. And unfortunately, James is out today with COVID, hoping he's feeling better, and happy to give this update regarding All In. To start with, we'll focus on round 1, which now is in our rear view mirror. We're looking at round 2 funding, which solely focuses on sustaining the work that was built during the first executive order. There's a new program as a part of round 2 called long-term rent assistance, which we'll take a look at. We also have encampment-focused outreach that is continuing from round 1, but we have a RFP that's out that agencies have applied for. And then there's also a new funding application that's out called Housing 360. So looking at round 1, this is just a reminder of the dashboard that's available publicly to all. You can look at firstly what's on the left, which is the outcomes achieved as of January 10th of 2024, which is the end of the first executive order year. And then on the right is the progress since about June 30 of 2023. And so it really hasn't been a long period of time that these outcomes have been achieved through. So it's very exciting. I particularly think, looking at the rehousing numbers of 641 households being moved from an unhoused situation to a permanently housed situation, which is really exciting for our community. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of the all-in round 2 funding that Lane County is receiving. It includes prevention rent assistance, funding to sustain the emergency shelter beds that were created or improved during round 1. Street outreach focused on both housing-focused outreach and that encampment-focused outreach. diversion funds, which really is focused on those who are newly homeless and can move out of houselessness very quickly. Maybe their struggle is paying move-in costs, and so let's get those move-in costs paid so they can get off the street or out of the shelters. Unit access, which focuses on both master lease that was developed during round one, where a nonprofit agency leases from a landlord multiple units so that they really, the nonprofit agency is the tenant working with the landlord, and then that nonprofit agency can move people in and out of those multiple units. It's much easier to rehouse folks in a master lease. However, there are some risks that nonprofits assume when they are master leasing, because ultimately they are the tenant. And then also long-term rent assistance, which is that new program. These dollars, they go through the end of this fiscal year, and we're on the verge of spending out the all-in round one dollars as well. So there's a lot of spending happening for the rest of this fiscal year. Next slide. So a few of the key differences between the round $1 and the round two is that there are new programs, notably long-term rent assistance, and this is structured very similarly to Section 8 vouchers. And what it is that someone who is unhoused is able to get, what the state is referring to as a voucher to receive rent assistance, hopefully on a longer term basis. The long-term rent assistance program today just goes through the end of this fiscal year, but the state has structured the program in an effort to create something that's much more ongoing and very much is focused on how do we get LTRA funded through the next biennium, so 2025 through 2027, which would be really important because many folks who are needing Section 8 vouchers need it long term, because we know our rents are very, very high, and the ability of many households to be able to earn an income where they can take on rent themselves is challenging. So it'd be great to have this as an ongoing opportunity. There's also a 360 behavioral health pilot, and this is a pot of dollars at the state level that communities can apply for to increase the behavioral health supports that are being received at the community level for people who are either houseless or in housing programs. This pilot is amazing, and this will not be a shock to anyone. We have a serious lack of behavioral health providers that we are able to hire across the community. And so that is lingering as the MAC group is exploring what to do and whether they should submit an application to the pilot. Is will there be behavioral health professionals to be able to hire in order to make this a reality? Another notable difference is expanded criteria. So during the first round, only people who were unsheltered were eligible to go into a rehousing program. And so if someone were in a shelter, unfortunately, they weren't eligible for the executive order rehousing program. And a lot of folks say this just doesn't make sense, and it was a state requirement. And so fortunately, now going into round two programming, those who are unsheltered and those who are sheltered, because those folks still are houseless, they are eligible for rehousing programs as well, which is fantastic. We know that there's a real benefit in being able to move people out of shelter and into permanent housing. Next slide. So this is just a few more details about the long-term rent assistance. Thanks to Homes for Good, our housing authority, who is serving as the program administrator. And so basically what that means is they're going to determine the eligibility of program participants, and they're going to cut the checks every month and work with the landlords. We also have, I believe, 5 nonprofit agencies that are providing the case management client support in partnership with Homes for Good. And Homes for Good is going to start their role beginning in January. Just like with Section 8, there are some more strict requirements that come with LTRA. It includes people not renting units more than 100% of fair market rent, and so that does limit units that folks might be able to move into. An housing quality inspection or an Inspire housing inspection is required, and it really just means that the home is suitable to live in, that there aren't any live wires, there aren't any big holes, but that is another just kind of step that needs to happen before someone moves in. And then there's income evaluations and reevaluations, and folks have to meet a certain income level. Our goal is to serve 249 households through long-term rent assistance. And we do think that we have the program infrastructure in place, and fortunately have been able to enter folks who were in rapid rehousing programs during round 1 into LTRA already. So we already have clients in the program and being served. Next slide. Spoke about the Housing 360 behavioral health pilot. You can see the 2 key objectives, and both very much require the hiring of behavioral health professionals. And so that's our biggest challenge when it comes to putting in an adequate application to this pilot grant opportunity. And they are planning on funding 3 to 4 pilots. And so even if we do put a grant in, of course, there are many more regions than the 3 to 4 regions that will receive a grant. Next slide. These are potential program ideas regarding that Housing 360 pilot. And so really appreciate the MAC pulling together these innovative and creative ideas that all help address barriers that exist within the community. And so they're going to continue to chew on these and decide how to move forward. Next slide. The plan itself is due on September 16th, so we should be able to come back to this group during the executive committee meeting and let you know exactly how the MAC decided to move forward. Next slide. That's it. So a lot going on, but really appreciate all the agencies involved with the executive order work, and continue to learn kind of how things are playing out for this year from the state, as well as just hope for the funding to continue into the next biennium.
And we're a little bit behind schedule, but I will allow for some quick comments. And Heather, I saw you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
Y'all are going to learn. I talk a lot, and I'm sorry. Well, sorry, not sorry. Traditional health workers, peer support workers, and community health workers, is that something that the MAC group is also exploring as a part of this process?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, as a part of the long-term rent assistance program, there are plans in action to have peers to support folks who are housed in either regaining or continuing their stability in housing.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
When you're looking at the pilot for the behavioral health, is that specific to QMHPs, or is it QMHA and QMHP, Qualified Mental Health Associate, Qualified Mental Health Professional? Because I believe there's quite a few more QMHAs in Lane County than Ps.
Thank you. I definitely agree. And what likely would happen is there would be at least 1 or 2 QMHAs, and we would need a QMHP to supervise, and that is a challenge as well.
Well, to add on to that comment, as a former QMHA 20 years ago or 25, down in Coos County, we had, we actually had like 20 to 25 severely mentally ill people. And it makes a difference when you've got that person that supports and addresses the crisis before it happens. So important, and a decent salary so that you actually get qualified staff.
Other comments? No? So before we get to Brittany, I do want to throw in that peer support specialists are also included in that continuum of behavioral health folks. So they will definitely be included in those models as well. Thank you, Kate.
Awesome.
And we're now going to turn it over to Brittany, who is going to give us a new update on the PHB strategic planning project.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you today. Thank you, Sean. I am coming, this is, I think, the second PHB meeting in a row, unless I missed one, where I'm presenting on the strategic plan. And I asked for grace and forgiveness from folks who might be hearing things for the second time. I know we've had a lot of new folks join the Poverty and Homelessness Board, so I wanted to make sure we were making space to level set with the board and make sure that you're tracking this process because it's yours. But I don't want you to feel behind. We are still in the early stages, but things are about to pick up. So first, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Brittany Manzo. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a facilitator and a homeless services policy advisor who is often told she's talking too fast. So I'm going to slow down a little bit, but I am going to try to keep us on time. Folks in the room, I got to know several of you through the all-in process as a technical assistance provider. Prior to that, I've been working in Oregon for a couple of years now. I'm based in DC, but I just moved back from the West Coast earlier this year. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to dig in deeper with Lane County and understand not just where we are, but our visions for the future. So that's the purpose of the strategic planning process in a nutshell. But last month at the PHB meeting, we kind of fine-tuned the purpose of this process. So over the next 6 months, we're doing our best to gather as much community input and community engagement as we can to help us set the path for the next 3 years. This is a process that'll set our plans for 2025 through 2028. So the purpose of the strategic plan is to gather that input to guide and sustain and improve Lane County's efforts to end homelessness, and as well as efforts to assist people who have low incomes in meeting their basic needs and achieving self-sufficiency. So some of that may sound wonky. I'm really grateful that we opened with new norms that keep us rooted in the charter of the Poverty and Homelessness Board. It is a lot of work that you all hold and carry. So I appreciate that we're keeping our eyes wide on that mandate through this process. And we're also going to be prioritizing going deep to make sure we're effective. So the strategic plan will include priorities and strategies for systems and program improvement, guidelines for funding and investments, priorities for intergovernmental and community advocacy, as well as the performance measures and monitoring to make sure that we're continually making progress, updating our goals, and keeping our eye on the ball over the next 3 years. So this process over the next 6 months, we are here in summer 2024, right on time, as they say, with community engagement and data analysis. So I've been working with Kate's team to dig deep on some of your systems data, as well as working with the National Alliance to End Homelessness as they're getting ready for the System Design Clinic in September. Next week, we're actually kicking off workshops with frontline service providers to dig into some of the questions around the strategic plan. I'll share a little bit about that in a minute. So over the next couple of months, we're really focused on community engagement, or next month, actually. Come late September, we're going to be shifting into zeroing in on our priorities, developing new task groups, and starting to draft that strategic plan that we're hoping to wrap up in the winter. So as I said, community engagement is really ramping up over the next month. We've had some conversations with folks already, but We're formalizing those into workshops over the next few weeks, I'm sorry. So we'll have workshops with outreach, shelter, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing providers, as well as domestic violence and sexual assault service providers, mental health, substance abuse service providers and supports, public service workers, to make sure that we're understanding what the folks who are closest to those serving and experiencing homelessness, those who are doing the work on the ground, what they understand about where we are now, how we got here, and where we want to go. So those workshops will be, they'll be wrapping up right before the system design clinic. We'll then have, let me go back to this slide in case you all wanted to make sure you see yourselves in here. We're also going to be, I'll be joining League's meeting on September 6th. I met with Amanda last week to talk about League's work plan and how those priorities get infused into the strategic plan and guide us forward. Something I meant to share in my introduction is that some of the hallmarks of my work with folks I've worked with in the past is centering and advancing racial equity and making sure we're centering the wisdom and the leadership of people with lived experience. And so League is going to be, League's already set their work plans for the year, and they're going to be critical to advising and supporting on community engagement. Like I mentioned, we have the system design clinic in mid-September, which will help add some of that really rich qualitative data to our understanding of what's working and what's maybe missing in the community. As the school year ramps up, we're also going to be engaging with McKinney-Vento liaisons, and then we'll be back at the Poverty and Homelessness Board for this workshop discussion on September 19th. We're also going to be meeting with county staff in that time, again, to dig into some of these questions of what do we understand, what do our frontline staff understand about where we are now, what's working well, what's not working well, and where we want to go from here. So really, when you look into how companies are thriving today, how communities are thriving today, it's that they're able to hold a really clear shared vision of the future and then a really pragmatic step-by-step every day. But that, question of what do you hope for the community and how can we make that real? How will we know when it's real? That's part of this process too, just as much as the brass tacks of how we build a stronger homeless service system and a system that can meet the needs of low-income residents in Lane County. So I'm mindful of time. Can I check back with the room about how much we have for questions? I know I'll be back soon too with more of this.
Go ahead. We'll make it work. I'll make it work.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to open it up to any questions folks have about the process to date or what we're looking ahead at. I know this is a quick jump in for some of you.
I like how you're already looking at me like Heather's going to have a question. That's going to be accurate every single time, I promise you. So just to confirm that organizations and shelter providers that are not a part of All-In funding will still be participating in the community engagement process, correct?
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you.
So the strategic plan, the reason it's so large is because the Poverty and Homelessness Board's mandate is so large. So we're engaging all continuum of care funded agencies, all CSBG funded agencies. The work that sits under the Poverty and Homelessness Board, those stakeholders are the stakeholders here. So absolutely is the answer.
And that'll include like groups that have never been historically funded by Lane County, or like the smaller street outreach groups like Barefoot Defenders and things like that?
Yep, so Lane County's team is running point on who's getting the invitations. Those, we just did a poll to figure out some scheduling, so those are just getting on the calendar. If you have any agencies in particular that you want to make sure they reached out to, if you could reach out to connect with Kate, she'll make sure that that folks are on the list.
Okay, cool beans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Heather.
The right side of the table. Any questions? You guys have been quiet. Nope, all good. Okay. And I'm not seeing anything on Zoom. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Thank you.
Okay, and we are now to Amanda.
Okay, thank you. And I know we're still a little behind, so I'll keep it brief. But So as our COC board, I just wanted to bring a couple of our current opportunities that are happening to this group and just give kind of a highlight and overview of what's happening and sort of what the schedule is. So in your packet, you have a summary for the Continuum of Care Builds opportunity. This is a new opportunity this year that we had anticipated for some time. There was additional funds that were appropriated specifically to fund new construction, acquisition, and rehab under the COC program. Those are costs that are typically eligible under our regular COC application, but the amount of funds that we typically have in an application year are not typically enough to cover that type of cost. So we don't normally see a lot of COCs applying for those costs under the COC. And so this is sort of a separate commitment of funds to help sort of drive COCs to build or create new permanent supportive housing to serve individuals and families with where at least one person has a disability. And so we're excited about the opportunity. We have until the end of November to apply for this. Each COC has a specific limit on what they can apply for. Our COC, based on our funding amount, we can apply for up to $5 million, and we can apply for just one application. So we can't submit more than one application for this opportunity. There are some communities that can apply for two if you have tribally designated housing entities or tribal lands within your geographic COC area, but those do not apply to us. And so there are some set-asides for those populations. And so approximately 25 awards will be made around there for this opportunity, but some are set aside specifically for those tribal communities, as well as states that have, I think, less than 2.5 million populations that are a whole state COC. I think there are like 8 or 10 of, I can't remember the number. So there are some of those 25 sort of spots are set aside. And so it's going to be highly competitive, thinking about, about 20 or less than 20 applications will be accepted. And there are over 400 COCs across the country that could apply. So just thinking about that, it is going to be highly competitive. And so this is really emphasizing the capital costs for creating permanent supportive housing. You can also apply within the application for supportive services or operations costs to support the project, but it's limited to 20%. And they're really emphasizing, just like our regular Continuum of Care NOFO, to really leverage other housing resources like project-based vouchers or other commitments for paying for the units, as well as low-income housing tax credits, home funds, any other resources that could support and really braiding funding in order to create these projects, similar to what we've done in the past with MLK Commons or the NEL, really pulling in everyone to support, as well as leveraging healthcare or other supportive services commitments from outside of this funding source as well. So there are requirements for both of those things to be included in the application. And in general, what else do I want to say? Let's see. So we will have to have a support letter from our board chair, just sort of stating that the COC supports this one application. We plan to bring this back once we have done a selection. We are planning to issue a request for proposals or RFP next week, and essentially it will really just mirror what HUD is asking for in the application, and then we will work with whoever is selected to develop that application and make sure it's really strong, and we will bring that to the board just to give an overview of what the project is that's being proposed and have sort of a stamp of approval on that from the Continuum of Care. And so what else do I want to say? I think that's primarily it for this application. I had a thought and I lost it. So the other thing is that HUD is really looking to fund, there are a lot of, within the questions in the application, they're really looking to fund entities or applicants who really have significant experience with development, with permanent supportive housing, operating these types of programs. And so we're really looking for folks who have done this at least 3 or 4 times, specifically as called out, and so they want folks that really have a lot of experience in developing permanent supportive housing and operating it to be included. And it can include, the application can be one application, but it could include the development side. It can include subrecipients to do services, partnerships with other entities. So there may be multiple entities involved, but there will be one primary applicant. Any questions on the COC builds opportunity? And the support, if the application includes supportive services or operating or those other COC costs, those can be renewable in future COC competitions. So that could be adding to our regular COC portfolio. Any questions online about that?
Okay, that's great. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's an exciting opportunity. We obviously need a lot more development around permanent supportive housing. So it is a good opportunity, although a very competitive one. And in case we didn't have enough to do, we also have our just regular annual COC competition happening at the same time. So we did receive our notice of funding opportunity that we receive every year from HUD on our COC competition. And this year they have listened to COCs and have made this a 2-year NOFO. So we normally complete this every year, and everyone said, hey, we spend so much time doing this application that it just starts all over again right when it's done, and we don't have time to do the actual work that we want to do around homelessness. So we will just complete it this year, the actual narrative part that we submit to HUD, and then they will just carry that over through next year, so we won't have to do that whole narrative application, or I should say I will not have to do that narrative application next year. So I guess I'll take the summer off next year, who knows? But we will still have to submit some project application information next year, so some of those smaller pieces. So that's good news. That's a big change this year. The other thing to note about this year that's new is that the amount available for bonus or new projects is at 12%, which is 5% higher than it has been previously. So it's typically more around 7%. So that's a pretty significant increase that we did not anticipate. I don't know if that's because it is a 2-year NOFO and they won't be offering, or they don't know what will be offered in terms of new projects next year, because that really depends on appropriations for fiscal year 25. So we do have a significant amount more for new projects that we can apply for. Around 765,000 is my estimate. There are some changes to the domestic violence bonus and youth homelessness demonstration program, YHCP replacement renewal process. Those are sort of in the weeds. The only thing really to know is that they've specified that when you are reallocating those types of projects, they have to be reallocated to the same population, because those are funds set aside for DV or youth. So you can't take a youth project and then reallocate it to serve adults, essentially. They just want those to stay with the same populations. And we can do a reallocation of YHDP projects, which previously we were not allowed to do. So that provides us some additional flexibility to move funding if needed. And I'll bring back anything related to those to the COC committee. We haven't made any reallocation decisions yet. The other major change, all the HUD policy priorities that are typically outlined in the notice of funding have remained largely the same, and you'll see those in your packet. The only new one is building an effective workforce, and what they're really saying here is that they understand that nonprofits that do this work have not seen an increase in their supportive services line item. You do see increases in the rent amounts annually based on FMR, but these grants do not receive any other updates. And if you don't have housing line items in your budget, you don't receive any increase. So you could be funded at the same level you were funded at 20 years ago for a lot of these projects. And as we know, costs of staff and just the cost of doing business has increased substantially just in the last year or so, but certainly over time could have increased considerably. And so our agencies are putting a lot more into their projects than they might have had to in the past. So this is a welcome change. Essentially, we won't have to do anything with this, but HUD has been given permission to apply a cost of living adjustment to those budget line items when they get renewed, similar to how FMR increases happen. So we will see that for our HMIS grant, for our supportive services line items. I think those are the two primary ones. So that's a welcome change. I think that our funded agencies will appreciate that. So you will see a funding amount summary. These are all sort of estimates because we don't have our HUD publishes those amounts, and we're expecting that next week. And so these are the estimates based on the percentages and my own calculations. And As far as what's happening currently in the timeline, so we've started working on the application. The COC committee has met to talk about new project opportunities. They had already met previously just in the anticipation, because we don't like to wait until the NOFO is released, because then we don't have a lot of time for selection. And so they've already met, had sort of talked about dedicating new funds to coordinated entry as a priority. Now that we know there's a higher percentage of funding available, I did reconvene the committee to talk again about what we might want to do with a balance of funding, and they had determined to sort of put that out to our co-applicants, Homes for Good and St. Vincent de Paul and Lane County, to kind of talk through in accordance with our policies, whether we all had interest in a new project. St. Vincent de Paul has declined for this opportunity, and so Homes for Good did want to apply for additional funds for the Bridges on Broadway permanent supportive housing project. You might remember that one was selected last year through selection, but we didn't have enough funding to support the whole project, so we only funded half of the units. And so this will be to fund potentially the other half and fill that gap. I'm talking really quickly. What else?
Somehow we went from being behind by 5 minutes to ahead by 5 minutes. So.
I talk about this in my sleep. It just comes out. I think that's primarily it. We will work with our co-applicants, as we do every year, to finish their renewal applications and get those submitted. Those are due 30 days prior to the deadline. So I will be working with them starting next week on getting those in as well. And then, of course, the narrative portion that we do. And this group will review that application before it's submitted, and we're required to have your approval, as well as the ranking that the COC committee will complete will have to be approved at the October meeting. And it actually has to be, the ranking has to be posted by the 15th of October. It's required to be posted 15 days prior, but our meeting happens 2 days after that. And so I think that happened last year, and we posted it just with the caveat that it has not yet been formally approved. And then we will post it again once it is approved. Any questions about all of that information?
Heather, I'm not looking at you in particular, but I have this thing. I look left for questions, I look right for questions, I look in front of me for questions. So.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Amanda.
Great.
And that brings us down to the chair updates. Is Catherine still with us? Can you tell?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yay. Okay. Yeah, just I think quick update on coordinated entry. We are in the next couple months kind of starting process of looking back and doing some initial evaluation of the changes we made to the assessment tool at the beginning of the year. So anticipate even just maybe some information sharing with the bigger group about kind of how that's going, feedback, that type of thing. And then we're also, the data team has been putting together kind of brought to the group some ideas for a dashboard around coordinated entry. So kind of some additional transparency and information sharing in the community around what's happening in that part of our system. So that will be coming soon also. And I think that's probably good for now.
Thank you. Do we have a representative from the healthcare committee?
Maria, do you want to give any updates? Looks like not.
Or how about from League?
I don't know if any of our League members are on, but if not,
I didn't see Richard's name up there today.
So League continues to work on their work plan. The last meeting really focused on getting input directly from people with lived experience, especially those who are in it right now. So they've talked about a lot of strategies to do that, including potentially tabling at different organizations like the service station or other, or really getting out on the ground and getting that input from people and what they want to see from this body and from League and what they want to see in our strategies. And so that's something they are talking through. The other thing that they're really focused on is bathroom access and increasing bathroom access. And so they've just discussed a lot of strategies around that. And I think next steps will really be to reach out to a variety of partners to figure out how we move forward different things that they have as ideas under that. We have added one additional new member, and so we will bring an updated slate. We are awaiting a pending approval for one or two other members, but that new slate will come to this body. And then the next meeting, like Bernie said, will be focused primarily on strategic planning.
Thank you, Amanda. Does it look like Maria can unmute herself now? Okay, Maria, if you want to give an update for the Health Committee.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So what I would say with the Health Committee currently, I'm new to the Health Committee, so can't give you sort of a more long-term update. But as of our last meeting, we were really focused on kind of some reintroductions to the meeting and what everyone really wanted to see out of that space for planning purposes, and kind of just reacclimating. And there's been some transition as I've taken over as the staff person in place of Danielle Bautista. And so just getting reacclimated in that way. And we are in our meeting tomorrow going to be having some more conversation around the mobile health clinic that Lane County is getting up and going, working with a couple of the shelter providers locally, including St. Vincent de Paul and Equitable Social Solutions. So we'll be talking a bit about that, and then learning a little bit more about the process that Trillium goes through around CHW billing. So there's a lot of interest in just learning more around those topics.
Thank you. And do we have a representative from the Youth Homeless Solutions Committee? No.
For either of the
Okay, thank you. Oh, and then Amanda, you're on again for the COC Committee.
I think I covered most of what the COC Committee worked on in my update, but they've been talking about new projects, and then their next meeting we will discuss reallocation and prepping for the ranking portion of the COC competition.
Thank you. So for wrap up, we have 3 Poverty and Homelessness Board seats that are open. The application's available through September 6th. So I ask all you board members, if you have an opportunity, that you speak to somebody that you think would be great to join us, to encourage them to do so. And don't forget, I think an email went out to everybody already about a save the date for the System Design Clinic, if you're able to make it on September 11th, and the 12th is for the PHB members specifically.
Was that a calendar invite or just to save the date?
Just to save the date. Thank you, yeah. Okay, and so with that, you can add a couple of things there.
Thank you. And I got a very good question from a member regarding, September 11th and 12th to block off is enormous ask. And I have enormous appreciation for anyone who can do that. Thank you. But if you're choosing as a PHB member, we'd love to have you at the meeting on the 12th as number 1. And then if you're able to come the 11th, please do as well. But particularly like to have as many of the PHB members at the meeting on the 12th as possible. A save the date was sent out. If you haven't seen it, please don't hesitate to email me and I'll make sure you get the information. We'll also send a follow-up from this meeting and it'll include the save the date again. Also, just want to give a shout out to Mike Fleck, who I know left a little earlier, but has been a member of the PHB for years as an executive, as an elected member. And I think this was an unexpected change for him, and his expertise and just willingness to jump in will be missed. So kudos to Mike. And then lastly, the community, the CHA, you might be familiar with the CHIP and the CHA, the Community Health Assessment, is being kind of redone, just like we're doing with our strategic plan. And a survey has been released. And it was sent out through Diana's community announcements. I'll send it out in this meeting's follow-up. But the plea is that it go out more widely than just public health folks, because, this is very much, what's needed across our community. And, those of you sitting here have very strong knowledge. And so just encouraging you to fill out that survey and then feel free to share it along with anyone else who you think might be interested in filling in the survey, whether it's within your group of colleagues or beyond. So thank you for that.
Is there a social media post associated with the CHA survey that we can link to?
That's a great question. I haven't seen one, but let me check.
Okay.
And if not, I'll try to encourage one because I think it's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So just as a quick wrap up, we approved the group agreements with some edits that Amanda will take back and put together for us, and then we'll all have to put our signature on there. And once again, thanks to the league for that. And we'll have more to come later on down the road in regards to the administrative hub and the work that they're doing with LCOG, NAO, if I got that one correct, and nonprofits. We talked about the round 1 and 1-2. Very excited about the expansion with round 2 of being able to include folks that are sheltered and accessing funds, and also that they're going to extend the funding for rental cost, hopefully until individuals can transition to a permanent rental subsidy and avoid that donut hole that sometimes has happened in the past when we've had grants and contracts that have like an end date of how long funding is there. You took my thing about, so also please contact Kate if you have additional agencies or entities that you would like to add to be a part of the strategic plan. And I'm also asking from the board, because I am here to facilitate and make sure that everybody is heard, but there may also be things that you would like to add to the agenda or that you want to talk about that you think are important. So please reach out to me or to James. I'm not going to say Kate because she's here today, about things to add to the agenda. So, because we meet as the executive team and talk about the agenda. But I will be the first one to say that we've been involved in this stuff for a while. And so we're able to go through things pretty quickly. But we want everybody to be involved and have a voice in the things that are important to you and the people that you serve every day. So if there's things that need to be added to the agenda that you feel are important, please feel free to reach out to us, and so that we can reach out to board members to see if there's things that we need to add. And you took my thing about Councilor Fleck. I think that is all. So unless anybody would like to say anything? No? All right. With that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone.